A major oil company executive suddenly goes missing,
Mr. Riso simply just didn't exist anymore.
disappearing from the driveway of his own home.
Go!
We were treating it as a potential kidnapping.
Investigators look at a wide range of suspects.
These Exxon executives are well aware of this kind of thing that they might be subject to.
Is it an inside job? Is there somebody with a grudge? Is there somebody with some prior relationship?
When the abductor's identity is revealed, investigators are stunned.
It was as if you discovered that your next-door neighbor were concentration camp guards.
Keep your hands where we can see you!
April 29th, 1992. A woman living in the wealthy enclave of Morris Township, New Jersey, sees a car belonging to her neighbor, Sidney Riso. The car is parked in his driveway, its engine idling, but Sidney isn't in it.
His books were there, his coat was there, the car was running, but Mr. Riso simply just didn't exist anymore.
57-year-old Sidney Riso is CEO of Exxon International, one of the world's largest companies. He's not the type to abandon a running car unless something is wrong. The neighbor is instantly alarmed.
Sidney Riso's car is here. It's running. He's not here. This is very, very weird.
Her husband also worked for Exxon, and she contacted her husband to see what she should do, and he went to Exxon Corporate Security.
Security confirms that Sidney isn't at work. Then they call the Morris Township Police. Morris Township detectives alert the FBI and speak to Sidney's wife, Patricia.
She explained to me that she had last seen her husband when he was backing out of the garage that morning at approximately 7:30 to go to work. And the last she knew, he drove up the driveway, stopped as he normally did to get his newspaper.
Then Riso mysteriously vanishes.
We were concerned and frankly puzzled.
The Riso's street is cordoned off. Investigators and Exxon officials consider possible explanations for Riso's disappearance. Some are worse than others, but none of them are good.
All options are on the table. You're examining all different possibilities why a man of that stature would disappear.
One theory is that Sidney Riso felt the onset of a heart attack. He has a history of heart trouble. Perhaps he left his car for help and became disoriented or lost consciousness.
We conducted some searches of the interior of the property, along with the exterior, and were unable to locate him.
Canine and equestrian units look deeper into the surrounding woods, while a helicopter searches from above, but they find no trace of Sidney Riso.
We did make some checks of local hospitals to see if somebody had taken to a hospital or anything like that, and that was unsuccessful also.
Investigators and Exxon officials also consider another rather distasteful scenario. For reasons of his own, Sidney Riso decided to disappear.
We wanted to make sure that there was nothing else that was going on in his life that would indicate that he voluntarily walked away from the residence.
But authorities quickly discover that Sidney Riso has no reason to vanish.
The family appeared to be intact, the marriage appeared to be intact, their financial status seemed to be intact. There didn't seem to be any reason for Mr. Riso to disappear on his own.
Digging deeper, investigators shift their focus from personal to professional. They turn to Sidney's coworkers, looking for someone with a motive.
Is it an inside job? Is there somebody with a grudge? Is there somebody with some prior relationship?
But Riso is liked both by other executives and the people who answer to him.
Sidney Riso just did not appear to have any enemies out there.
It's a rare compliment for a person in his position. As the CEO of a huge company with operations in Asia, Africa, South America, and the Middle East, Riso has immense responsibilities. At least a few enemies should go with the job. But investigators learn Sidney's not the typical corporate mogul. He's remarkably unassuming.
He and his wife, Pat Riso, every other Sunday or so used to go up to Paterson, New Jersey. They help serve food to the homeless as a means of just giving back to the community.
In addition, Sidney has little interest in the chauffeurs and limos usually favored by corporate officials. He prefers driving his own car.
He hopped in a jet like millions of other Americans do to drive themselves to work against the rush hour traffic.
But today, Sidney Risso's commute ended at the foot of his driveway, and no one knows why.
We were treating it as a potential kidnapping, but then again, it could be a missing person. We didn't know what the circumstances were regarding his disappearance.
If it is a kidnapping, Agent Chapman, who's worked dozens of such cases, notes that Risso's disappearance isn't playing out like most abductions.
Normally in a kidnapping investigation, within an hour or so after the individual has disappeared, you would have a call from the kidnappers demanding the ransom or giving you other instructions. This was several hours after Mr. Risso had disappeared, and we still had no contact from anyone.
Local police and FBI agents set up a joint command post in the Risso residence. But the day drags into night without a call. If this is an abduction, who are the kidnappers and what do they want? Why aren't they calling? Most important, where is Sidney Risso? Is he alive or dead? When Exxon executive Sidney Risso disappears, authorities believe he's been abducted. Though they don't yet have proof, it's the only scenario that makes sense. Besides, it's happened before.
There was a Mr. Victor Samuelson who had been kidnapped in South America, who was also an Exxon executive. And about 6 months after his disappearance, a ransom was paid and Mr. Samuelson was returned alive. So these Exxon executives are well aware of this kind of thing that they might be subject to.
Under the assumption it is a kidnapping, investigators quickly try to identify a possible suspect. They also hope the kidnappers will make contact. But after 24 hours with no word, concerns are escalating.
And of course, job one was obviously try to find Sidney Risso and rescue him before something bad happened to him. And that was our main focus.
Then, the break everyone's been waiting for. A woman calls the Exxon switchboard, claiming to be Risso's kidnapper.
We have Risso.
A female caller contacted the switchboard, advising that Mr. Risso had been kidnapped and it was in their care, and that further information could be obtained from a letter that was left at the Livingston Mall, which was a short distance away.
It would be a letter that would be taped to a light fixture in the parking lot.
Time is of the essence. Investigators speed off to retrieve the kidnapper's letter, hoping it will tell them the next steps for releasing Sidney Risso. They find an envelope, 12 miles from the command post. Inside, absolute verification that Sidney Risso has been abducted, and these are the people who abducted him.
They included in that letter Mr. Risso's Exxon credit card as proof that they had him, so that we would know that we were dealing with the true kidnappers of Mr. Risso.
Beyond that, the investigators hope the letter will tell them something that could lead them to Risso, but it proves to be a bitter disappointment.
Not a hair, a speck, dust, watermark, anything? Not yet.
There were no fingerprints on the envelopes or the letters. There was no watermark on the paper. It was generic paper that could be purchased from virtually any store. Whoever was writing the notes was very aware of forensic evidence.
The kidnappers claim to be environmental extremists seeking revenge on corporate America.
This was the post-Exxon Valdez, that huge oil spill in Alaska, so Exxon was not a popular corporation at the time of this incident.
They accuse large industrial entities like Exxon of destroying the earth and harming countless forms of life.
There are any number of people, whether it's environmental groups or just private individuals, who don't like what Exxon has done and don't like the fact that these oil tankers are out there and that this kind of accident can happen.
The letter is signed by the Fernando Pereira Brigade of the Warriors of the Rainbow. The signature is easily decoded.
The Rainbow Warrior was a Greenpeace ship that was blown up in Auckland, New Zealand.
Fernando Pereira was a photographer who had been killed when the Rainbow Warrior had been blown up.
An element of Greenpeace had vowed revenge for this killing of Fernando Pereira. It made sense that it would be the Warriors of the Rainbow who might have perpetrated this kidnapping.
The letter says they will trade Sidney Risso for money, a lot of it, $18.5 million, all in used $100 bills.
The ransom demand of $18.5 million was the highest ransom demand in the history of a kidnapping.
It's an incredible amount of money, but Exxon is prepared to pay.
Used $100 bills, small stacks.
We believed initially that this would be a business deal. Environmental kidnappers had taken Mr. Risso. We would pay them their money, and Mr. Risso would be brought back. So the money was available.
Okay, guys, this is where we're at now.
The letter lays out a detailed plan for the next contact with the kidnappers. First, Exxon officials are told to buy a cell phone. Then they are to run an ad in the newspaper. The ad must include the mention of rare international birds and the new cell phone number. When the kidnappers next make contact, they will bypass the Exxon switchboard and call the new cell phone directly. The kidnappers also specify that their contact on the other end of that cell phone must be Exxon's public information officer, Jim Maracas. Exxon agrees, sort of. With the FBI's help, they prepare to send in a ringer, an FBI agent who will pretend to be Jim Maracas.
I want there to be no doubt that they're talking to Jim Maracas.
The FBI, along with Exxon, wanted someone from the FBI to assume the role of Jim Maracas, and that was my assignment.
While the ransom money is being prepared, Maracas tutors Peterson on company history. They don't want his cover blown and Sidney Risso's life lost over some small detail.
Because Sidney's life is above all.
The stakes are high. The kidnappers make that clear with a cold-blooded threat. If their demands aren't obeyed, they'll keep Sidney Risso in total isolation with no food or water until he dies. Investigators are desperate to find kidnapped Exxon CEO, Sidney Risso. 2 days after his capture, they run an ad in the newspaper exactly as ordered in the letter sent by the kidnappers. An $18.5 million ransom is ready, and a cell phone hotline is set up. Now, the next move is up to the people holding Sidney Risso hostage.
It was completely in their hands. They set this up so that they were going to control the flow of communication between themselves and the law enforcement community.
But hours pass, and the kidnappers don't respond to the ad. It's a tense, nerve-wracking situation for all concerned.
When you don't hear from the kidnappers, your worst fears are that something happened to Sidney Risso.
Investigators wait by the phone all day and into the evening. Finally, at 9:30 that night, the cell phone rings.
Hello.
But it's not a kidnapper on the line. It's a recording of Sidney Risso begging Exxon to pay the ransom. He sounds desperate.
These people aren't going to hurt me. Just get the money. I'll be released, safely. Work with them. They essentially made him plead for his life.
However, due to the stress that Mr. Risso was under, his voice had become extremely altered, and not even his own family could recognize his voice.
Investigators had hoped for a meeting, pay the ransom, get Risso back. Now there is more subterfuge. The tormented voice of Sidney Risso directs them to another letter.
He said at Lewis Morris Park, there's going to be a letter waiting for us.
The location is only 3 miles from the command post.
I retrieved the letter, and that had additional instructions on it for us, for Exxon to follow, relative to Sidney Risso's release.
This letter lays out precise details for packaging the ransom money. The way the kidnappers want it handled is as extraordinary as the amount.
They asked us to assemble it into 10 different bags, specifically in Eddie Bauer bags, and divide the money up evenly into those 10 bags.
$18.5 million in used $100 bills is literally a ton of cash.
Each one of the 10 bags that we had weighed well over 200 pounds. How were they going to be able to lift 200 pounds of money from one place to another? How were we supposed to lift 200 pounds of money from place to place?
To make it possible to transport the ransom, FBI agents decide not to limit the cash to $100 bills. By including larger denominations, they whittle the total weight down to only 600 pounds, far more manageable. Agents then develop contingency plans for dealing with either a single ransom drop or a series of drops. They are ready to deliver the ransom whenever and wherever the kidnappers demand.
Exxon had provided the money, so we would be able to provide some money to the kidnappers. Our hope was that we would never get to that point.
2 more days drag by without any contact from the kidnappers. Desperate for a new lead, agents revisit their lists of environmental extremists, disgruntled Exxon employees, and anyone who might have even the least motive to kidnap Sidney Riso. They question every possible suspect. They find nothing. Then, on May 3rd, the cell phone finally rings again.
Yes, this is Jim Maracas.
Now, the plans they've prepared can be put in motion.
Yes.
Agent Ed Peterson answers,
Yes.
pretending to be Jim Maracas, Exxon's public information officer. The kidnappers accept that Peterson is Maracas, but there is no discussion, no negotiation, only demands. They want the ransom exchange to happen now. Ed Peterson and another FBI agent rush to the designated location. It's a phone booth outside Villa's restaurant, 13 miles from the command post.
We'd received word there as to how to forward the money on to the kidnappers.
It is the moment everyone has been working for. If all goes according to plan, Sidney Riso could be home tonight. The 2 FBI agents wait near the designated payphone in the parking lot of the restaurant. 1 hour passes, then another. The phone remains deathly silent.
No phone call was received at the Villa restaurant that night.
And it was very disheartening and discouraging for us because we thought that would be our chance to rescue Sidney Riso and apprehend the kidnappers. But it never happened.
It's a colossal disappointment for everyone involved.
Now we didn't know whether it was something that we had done or if it was something that the kidnappers had mixed up. We just were left hanging on a thread because we were not clear exactly what had happened at that time.
The investigation has hit a wall. Day after day, there's no contact with the kidnappers and no progress. Only a gnawing, escalating fear.
The silence was deafening.
Those days were excruciatingly horrible. When you have gaps where you receive no information and you still don't have your victim back, it's very difficult to think that you're getting anywhere with the investigation.
Finally, on May 14th, day 16 of the ordeal, another letter arrives. This one by mail.
Got another letter.
This new letter accuses Exxon of allowing FBI and police interference in the negotiations. The abductors claim that in response, they have moved Sidney Riso out of the country. But investigators are starting to doubt the kidnappers are who they say they are.
There were statements in some of the letters that began to lead us to believe that this was not an environmental group. The emphasis on environmental issues was downplayed, and what was being upplayed was, we want the money.
Investigators no longer believe the kidnappers have any international connections either. They think they are probably from somewhere close by.
The kidnapper believed that we could not tape or trace the cell phone calls. However, that's not necessarily true. And we were able to follow those phone lines and find where a particular phone call was made.
All the kidnappers' calls trace back to local payphones.
They were all within a 20 to 30 mile radius. If there were international ties, we would be getting communications from Europe or some other place.
In addition, the fact that all the letter drops are in obscure places, most likely known only to someone from the area, raises agents' suspicions.
As the job progressed and this kind of material surfaced, the idea of environmental terrorists slowly started to dissipate.
The kidnappers' strong local ties refocus the investigation. Once again, they look at people who know or work with Riso.
Who's been fired? Who's been recently let go? And you look at a company such as Exxon, it's huge. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people who might be disgruntled employees.
Police re-canvass the Riso neighborhood. They find an eyewitness who noticed an unfamiliar white van on the morning of the kidnapping. But it's daunting trying to trace it.
When we looked into white vans, we found out that in the state of New Jersey at that time, in 1992, there were 70,000 white vans registered.
Investigators begin cross-checking their list of possible suspects to see if any of them own a white van. Then, as police continue their recanvass, another clue comes to light.
The neighbors had seen a blonde woman on a couple of occasions jogging in a neighborhood early in the morning, and a composite sketch was done from what the witnesses could give us. The sketch was shown around the neighborhood and other neighborhoods, and no one could ever come up with somebody.
Investigators add blonde female to their list. Soon, their pool of potential suspects expands again. Evidence technicians discover a dog hair clinging to one of the letters.
So forensics is telling us that the hair off the letter is from a golden retriever.
The bad news is it's the most popular dog in the United States for a family to have.
Nevertheless, investigators comb through the cities near Morristown, accumulating names of people who own golden retrievers.
We tried to cross-reference these lists with anybody else on some of the other subject lists that we already had.
Disgruntled employees, white vans, blonde joggers, golden retrievers. But each new lead broadens the investigation instead of narrowing it.
Normally in an investigation, you start with a pool of people and you start to eliminate people. This investigation was completely opposite. Every time we turned around, we were growing larger and larger with potential subjects.
May 15th, the 17th day of Sidney Risso's disappearance. Shortly after 3 p.m., a female kidnapper calls to announce another letter. Like the first, this one is at a shopping mall.
I need you to get down there right now.
Okay.
The letter contains familiar warnings and threats, but it also has a repugnant new demand. They want Sidney Risso's wife, Patricia, to publicly beg for his release.
The people responsible for taking Sidney Risso demanded that Mrs. Risso appear and make a personal plea for his safety. It was perhaps the most offensive part of the job for me to make a demand of this woman to appear and beg for the life of her husband.
I am willing to do whatever is necessary to have him reunited with us, and I hope that he will be released very soon.
Mrs. Risso was just such a strong person that although it looked easy on TV, we knew that it took a great toll on her emotionally to be able to do this.
I love Sidney, and I want him to come home to us.
For investigators on the front lines, Patricia Risso's willingness to face the TV cameras is inspiring. But everyone knows that the effect on the kidnappers is all that matters. Will they finally be moved to make the deal and release Sidney Risso? Investigators trying to solve the kidnapping of Exxon executive Sidney Risso are dealing with delays and frustration at every turn. The kidnappers aren't making good on their promises. When the FBI tries to deliver the ransom, they don't show. Patricia Risso even goes on television and begs for her husband's return.
I love Sidney, and I want him to come home to us.
But Patricia Risso's capitulation to their demands gets absolutely no response. Authorities now believe the kidnappers are a small local group, not international environmental extremists.
What is this? This is amateur hour now.
But they're no closer to finding the kidnappers and freeing CEO Sidney Risso than the day they started.
This is conventional wisdom. The more time that passes, the less likelihood you're going to wind up finding the victim. And that's largely because simply the chances of something happening either accidentally or intentionally increase.
June 18th, day 51 of the kidnapping. The stalemate in the Risso case abruptly ends. The cell phone rings.
Yeah, this is Jim.
All of a sudden, there is this communication, and there's a demand for a drop.
And more calls would be coming in regards to where to deliver the money.
The call comes in just before 3 p.m. In little more than an hour, 5 more calls follow, giving orders and asking questions.
We received telephone calls saying, "Be ready, is the money ready?" Things along that line.
Hello? Money ready? The money is ready.
But the kidnappers still haven't told them how they want them to deliver the ransom. Will there be one drop? Multiple drops? Then FBI agents have an idea. they quickly mobilize.
If you'll please tell me where you want us to take it, we'll take it. Shortly. Shortly? You want us... Hello? Can you talk to me? Hello?
Since the kidnappers make all their calls from local phone booths, the FBI decides to stake out every one of them as their next move.
The FBI was able to bring in 300 agents that we could put out in the field, basically to monitor the phone booths in the immediate area for any type of activity that may lead us to the kidnappers.
Every agent is linked by radio to the command post.
So we were very well prepared, hoping to get that opportunity to catch the kidnappers making one of the ransom calls.
As all the investigators wait in position, 5 hours creep by with no further calls.
Did you see anything right now?
No, there's nothing. No.
Everyone is on edge. Is another chance to rescue Sidney Riso about to melt away?
Yeah.
We all hoped for the best, but this was a period of 52 days. At that time, we didn't know what we had, and we still didn't know whether Sidney Riso was dead or alive.
At 9:08 p.m., the silence is finally broken. This is the call everyone is waiting for. It's the kidnappers. The voice is tense, the instructions brief.
Hello? Leave now. Go to Tingley Road at Patriots Path. Go at Tingley Road at Patriots Path? And do what? Look on the ground. Hello?
Now the kidnappers have directed the team to a new location and told them to look for an envelope.
That's it. We're on, Riley.
Ed Peterson and his partner grab the cell phone and speed off to find the latest letter. They bring some of the ransom, but not all. Exxon is not willing to hand over the $18.5 million without proof that Sidney Riso is still alive. The response team is on the road for 5 minutes when the cell phone rings. It's the kidnappers again. Agent Peterson answers, still presenting himself as Jim Maracas.
Hello? Where are you? This is Jim. Can you please repeat everything so it's clear to us, okay?
Tingley Road, Patriots Path.
As Peterson talks to them, the command post listens to every word.
I was wired so they could hear the exact conversation that I had with the kidnappers on any telephone calls.
Investigators in the command post alert agents staking out payphones.
We're getting information that the perps are on the phone.
We came out on our radio frequency indicating that we had an incoming call from the kidnappers.
Agent Peterson tries to prolong the conversation about picking up the new envelope of instructions, but the kidnappers are becoming impatient.
Just bear with us because we're not used to doing this. We're a little nervous.
Envelope on the ground.
Okay, the envelope is on the ground.
Follow directions.
At 9:33 p.m., the agents find the envelope, but it's not the end of the line. The note directs them to another location with another envelope about 5 miles away. The kidnappers are leaving them a trail of letters. Will it lead them to Riso or anything at all?
From that time frame forward, we were run from point A to point B to point C.
9:50 p.m. At the local general store, the response team spends several frantic minutes hunting for an envelope. Finally, they find one, taped to the underside of a bench. This letter directs them to yet another location, a former school 4 miles away.
The letter was stuck inside a bush, so they had to search again to find that.
In addition to directions for the next letter drop, this message includes an alarming revelation. For some unknown reason, the kidnappers have the rescuers on a time schedule. Agents were supposed to be at the next location by 10 o'clock, but it's already 15 after. The ransom drop has turned into a nightmarish, high-stakes scavenger hunt with the life of Sidney Riso hanging in the balance.
You're constantly thinking about his welfare and how soon you can get to him to get him out of whatever particular situation he's in.
As Peterson and his partner speed to their fourth location, they're more than 30 minutes behind the kidnapper's schedule.
There was a telephone payphone out in front, and as the response team drove up, the phone was ringing.
Peterson leaps out and picks up. It's bizarre.
Yes.
The kidnapper asks
sorry,
if the train has
lost.
gone by.
And the agent really was unsure what was being talked about until he realized that if you turned around, you would see a train station on the other side of the parking lot.
Now investigators finally understand why the kidnappers were rushing them.
We believe that we were going to be told to get on that train with the money and then potentially leave the money at various sites along the train line.
Their timing was way off, and the train had already left the station.
The kidnapper says he will call back with an alternate plan.
So I stood there awaiting the next phone call, which was very disheartening because here I am, we're this close to maybe getting this guy.
It's a discouraging moment for Peterson. But one of the 300 agents staking out payphones radios the command post. She just saw a stocky white male make a call from a phone booth while Peterson was on the line with the kidnappers.
I have a man approaching payphone number 20. He looks suspicious. He appears to be putting on latex gloves.
He first put on a pair of latex gloves, dialed the phone, and she knew that it was being communicated because simultaneously we could all hear it.
The agent didn't try to arrest the man, just kept an eye on him.
Her job at that point was simply to try to get a physical description of the individual and to get a license plate on the vehicle if she could. And she did both of those things.
For the first time in 51 days, investigators have a solid lead.
We were able to get a license plate number for the vehicle, which came back to Betty's rental car in Hackettstown, New Jersey.
Betty's rental car is a small company, and it closed hours ago.
I call the Hackettstown police and get the emergency number for the owner. I wake her up.
Yes, I'm sorry, I know it's very late, but I need you to get down to your rental agency right now.
Investigators need to look at Betty's rental records. Agents immediately send a car to pick her up.
Betty subsequently told me that she had never gone that fast on land before.
A group of officers converge on Betty's. They're hoping that the name of at least one kidnapper is waiting there in the rental paperwork. But no one is prepared for what happens next. On June 18th, day 51 of Sidney Risso's disappearance, the FBI struggles to make contact with the kidnappers, hoping to pay ransom for the return of Sidney Risso. The kidnappers lead agents astray with a confusing trail of letters. The chance to rescue Sidney Risso is fading fast. Then, a big break.
Hello? Yes.
At exactly the moment a kidnapper calls Agent Peterson, another FBI agent is staking out a payphone. She sees a man making a call. He's wearing latex gloves. It's a dead giveaway. When the man leaves, the agent gets his license plate number. Investigators trace it to a local car rental agency and descend on the company. They're hoping to learn the identity of the kidnapper and break the case wide open.
It was late at night, and the owner of the car rental agency had come in specifically to meet with us to provide us with that information.
According to the company records, a man named Arthur Seal rented the car. Then, a surprise none of them could have predicted.
As our agents and police personnel were staging in the parking lot and waiting for other people to arrive, the vehicle with that license plate pulled into the parking lot.
The driver of the car that pulls into the parking lot is the man who rented the car, Arthur Seal. He's also the same man spotted wearing latex gloves while making a phone call. Seal is immediately arrested.
Keep your hands where we can see them.
And then that was the first huge and major break we got in the case, followed by the next one, which moments later, within minutes, his wife, Jackie Seal, pulled up next to him, surprised to see her husband there in custody.
See your hand. Bring it around. Turn around.
FBI agents are shocked. If these are the kidnappers, they are definitely a pair of unusual suspects. There is little in Arthur Seal's background to suggest he would ever turn to a life of crime.
His father was a deputy chief of police. He grew up in the suburbs. He went to a military academy for high school, married his high school sweetheart, you know. I mean, this guy was in a football hero, and he was the all-American boy.
Like his father, Arthur Seal became a police officer in New Jersey. He suffered a leg injury and eventually left with a disability pension.
And from there, ironically, he gets a job with Exxon Security, doing a lot of work for executive protection. So therefore, he had a very good working knowledge of Exxon and Exxon executives.
Irene's early years also offered no obvious hint of her future activities.
Irene Seal, whose nickname was Jackie, grew up in a nice, you know, middle-class suburban New Jersey family.
She married Arthur Seal after she had had 1 year of college, where she was studying to become a teacher.
She did her best to raise a couple of kids, a boy and a girl, as best she could, devoted herself to her family, to her husband, stayed close to her parents and her family.
They are not the people that you think of that are lurking around in dark alleys waiting to prey on people. They're normal people.
The Seals even have a golden retriever named Brandy. But beneath their normal appearance, Irene and especially Arthur Seal are driven by a hunger for the so-called good life.
He had all these grandiose ideas. He had purchased a 35-foot sailboat. He and his wife had plans to sail around the world. At the time, from what I understand, he didn't even know how to sail a boat. They purchased matching Mercedes, and they were living well above their means.
They had this sense of entitlement. They had a sense that this world owed them more.
And they just didn't have the work ethic as well. They wanted to gain their wealth at the expense of Sidney Riso and Exxon.
Now, their dreams of instant wealth are gone. But once in custody, under questioning, they still refuse to tell investigators what they most want to know. Where is Sidney Riso?
We're holding out hope that we might still be able to retrieve Sidney Riso alive and well, but we were realistic to know that 52 days had passed, and they never gave us any indication that he was alive and well.
Faced with kidnapping and extortion charges, Irene Seal cuts a deal with prosecutors. In exchange for a reduced sentence, she confirms what they suspect, that Sidney Riso is dead. In fact, he has been dead for weeks, murdered by the kidnapper's cruel neglect just a few days after the abduction. She then tells investigators exactly how it all went wrong. It begins 4 months before the abduction. A blonde Irene frequently jogs through the neighborhood, watching Sidney Riso's daily routine.
At around 7:25 in the morning, his car would emerge from this winding driveway. He'd get to the top of the driveway and open the car door and retrieve the newspaper, which was left right at the top of his driveway.
The daily newspaper pickup gives the Seals their opening. April 29th, the day of the kidnapping. Irene Jackie Seal jogs through the neighborhood, as she has done many times before.
And she kicked the newspaper about an extra 10, 15 feet away from the normal spot.
She then joins her husband, who waits down the street in a white van. When they see Sidney stop his car to pick up the paper, Irene hits the gas.
Arthur Seal was in the passenger side of the vehicle with the doors open, and he quickly jumped out. He had a automatic handgun and ordered Sidney Riso to get into the van, and Sidney Riso immediately complied.
However, when Riso sees a coffin-sized wooden box in the back of the van, he begins to resist.
Get in here! I will shoot you! Get in there!
He went along with the kidnapping at gunpoint, but once they wanted to put him in the box, he began to resist, and Mr. Seal shot him.
Although it didn't hit any bone, it was a superficial wound. It was enough of a trauma for Arthur Seal to be able to overpower Sidney Riso, duct tape his mouth, duct tape his eyes, restrain his wrist, and force him into the box.
They drive Riso some 30 miles to a storage facility where they have rented a space. They move the box in.
They would check on him usually twice a day, and they never gave him anything to eat. They just gave him bottled water and once in a while a little piece of lemon.
On Saturday, May 2nd, 3 days after Sydney's abduction, temperatures in the metal storage shed hover around 100 degrees, but no one checks on Sydney Riso.
So the next day when they got there, after he'd been there for probably 24 more hours without water or anything, in a shed that probably hit over 100 degrees in the height of the day, he was dead. They basically baked him alive.
Irene Seal pleads guilty to federal conspiracy and extortion charges.
Yes, I love my wife.
In the face of his wife's testimony, Arthur Seal also enters a guilty plea. In court, Irene Seal's account of Sydney Riso's last days is blunt and unemotional.
She seemed like somebody who could be baking cookies for your school. And to hear the way she recited how they had developed the plan, how they had decided to go and actually kidnap somebody, most tragically, how they allowed him to die simply by locking him in a box, a coffin. It was appalling. It was as if you discovered that your next-door neighbor were concentration camp guards.
According to the Brandon Police Department, officers were called to the McDonald's just before 7. When they arrived, they found Kiana Jackson had been shot and killed. The suspect was taken to the hospital from a self-inflicted gunshot. It was supposed to be a normal Monday evening. June 16, 2025. A mother and her 2 young children sat in a car at a McDonald's drive-thru in Brandon, Mississippi. The sun was still out. Kids were laughing in the back seat. Just another family grabbing dinner. Then gunshots. Inside that car, 25-year-old Kiana Jackson was shot and killed. Her 5-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son watched it happen. The man who pulled the trigger, John Terry's Dampier, the father of those children, the man Kiana had loved since high school, the man she once believed would protect her forever. But instead of protecting her, he ended her life, right there, in front of their babies. Police arrived just after 6:30 p.m. to find Kiana dead from a gunshot wound. John had turned the gun on himself. He was rushed to the hospital, but 2 days later he died too. 2 children lost both parents in a matter of minutes. A community was left asking, how did it come to this? This wasn't a random act of violence. This was the final chapter of a love story that had been dying for years. A relationship built on teenage dreams that turned into a nightmare of silence, control, and pain. Welcome to Shadows of Crime. Right now there are thousands of women like Kiana who are living with partners showing warning signs of danger, completely unaware that their lives could be at risk. If you want to help spread awareness about domestic violence and the red flags that could save innocent lives, then please like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel. Your action now could help protect another woman who might be in danger. So how does a high school romance end in murder? What pushed John Dampier to commit such a horrific act? And what signs did everyone miss? Stay with us, because this story is far more complicated than it seems. Before we talk about how Kiana Jackson died, we need to talk about how she lived. Kiana was born and raised in Pearl, Mississippi. She was 25 years old when she was killed. Friends and family described her as strikingly beautiful, not just on the outside, but on the inside too. Her presence brought warmth to every room she entered. She had a smile that could light up the darkest days. She was gentle, kind, and fiercely protective of the people she loved. But Kiana wasn't chasing the life most 25-year-olds dream about. While her peers were graduating college, climbing career ladders, and stepping into their independence, Kiana made a different choice. She became a full-time stay-at-home mom to her 2 children, Kehlani, who was 5 years old, and Khalil, who was 3. She called them her broke besties. It wasn't just a cute nickname. It was the truth. Kiana didn't have much money. She didn't have a fancy job or a big house, but what she did have was love. Endless, unconditional love for her kids. They were her world, her purpose, her reason to keep going, even when life got hard. Kiana poured everything she had into Kehlani and Khalil. She cooked their meals, she rocked them to sleep, she played with them at the park, she made sure they felt safe, loved, and cared for. Even when she didn't feel that way herself. Her family was incredibly supportive. One friend said, "Kiana had the most supportive family I've ever seen. They rallied around her in times of need. They gave her a foundation of love and strength." And when Kiana started thinking about going back to school, maybe studying nursing, they encouraged her. They believed in her dreams. After her death, Kiana's family started a GoFundMe page to help cover funeral costs and support her children. The page described her as a cherished mother leaving behind 2 beautiful children, a daughter, 5, and a son, 3 years of age. She also was a beloved daughter, sister, and friend. The page raised over $15,000 in just days. Strangers from all over the country donated. They didn't know Kiana personally, but they felt her story. They saw a mother who deserved better, a woman who gave everything and asked for nothing in return. Kiana Jackson wasn't perfect, but she was real. She was loving. She was trying her best. And she deserved to live. Kiana and John didn't start as a tragedy, they started as a love story. They met in high school, 2 teenagers in Pearl, Mississippi, falling for each other the way young people do. Through shared playlists, late-night movie marathons, and food runs after school. They made promises to each other, whispered dreams about forever. At 17 years old, those promises felt like marriage vows. Everyone said they were meant to be childhood sweethearts, the kind of couple people root for. When Kiana got pregnant, they made a plan. John enlisted in the army. He would serve his country, earn a steady income, and build a future for their growing family. Kiana would stay home and take care of their baby. When John came back, they'd pick up right where they left off. Together, stronger, ready to build the life they'd always talked about. It sounded like something out of a Nicholas Sparks novel, young love, sacrifice, a happy ending waiting on the other side. But that's not what happened. The John who came home from the army was not the same John who left. Something had changed. He was cold, distant, bitter. Whatever he experienced during his service, he never talked about it. He carried trauma he refused to name. He held on to anger he wouldn't release. And slowly the love between them started to die. Kiana tried to hold things together. She stayed soft, she stayed patient, she focused on their children and kept the household running. But John checked out. He became a ghost in their home, physically there but emotionally gone. The future they once dreamed about together now felt like a prison. Kiana was exhausted. Loving John had become painful. Being around him had become draining. She started thinking about leaving, quietly, carefully. She didn't broadcast it. She didn't want to hurt him. She just wanted peace. But John didn't see it that way. To him, her wanting to leave wasn't about finding herself. It was about abandoning him, betraying him, disobeying him. And he wasn't going to let that happen. When John came back from the army, he wasn't the same person Kiana fell in love with. He was different, colder, harder, closed off. He got a job as a tower climber in Pearl, Mississippi. It was dangerous work, climbing thousands of feet into the air alone with his thoughts disconnected from the world below. The job gave him freedom, escape, a way to avoid being home. And when he wasn't climbing towers, he was locked away in their living room trying to build a rap career. He spent hours producing beats, recording verses, and posting clips online. In the beginning, the music wasn't great. Offbeat verses, recycled bars, frustration disguised as ambition. But over time, it got better. John had talent. But his music career never brought stability. It never brought fulfillment. It was just another way to escape. Meanwhile, Kiana was left to carry everything alone. She managed the household, she raised their children, she cooked, cleaned, and kept their lives together while John drifted further and further away. The emotional distance between them grew unbearable. John became withdrawn, moody, unpredictable. He didn't hit her, he didn't scream at her, but he didn't have to. The silence was enough. The coldness was enough. The way he looked through her like she wasn't even there. That was enough. It's the kind of abuse people don't always recognize. There were no bruises, no police reports. But Kiana was suffering. She was surviving in her own home, and that's when the tragedy really began. She didn't complain. She didn't post about it online. She didn't rant to her friends. Instead, she poured everything she had into Kalani and Khalil. They became her reason to keep going, her joy, her purpose. But John? He checked out of everything except his own self-pity. He didn't want to be a partner, he didn't want to be a father, but he also didn't want to let Kiana go. That's the twisted part. Men like John know they're not doing right by you. They know they've become a burden instead of a blessing, but they still want to keep you on a leash. It's not love, it's ownership, it's possession, it's fear that you'll move on and become everything they never could. And that fear, it's dangerous. By the time Kiana realized how dangerous it was already too late. The warning signs were there, people saw them, but no one knew how bad things really were until it was too late. John's moods became more unpredictable. He was possessive. He didn't want to be present in Kiana's life, but he also refused to let her leave. He didn't help raise the kids, but he didn't want her to move on without him. It was control disguised as love. Then, in 2023, something happened that should have been a wake-up call for everyone. John got into a deadly fight with his stepfather, Johnny McLaren. It started as an argument involving John's brother. John showed up. Things got heated. A gun went missing. A butcher knife appeared. By the end of it, Johnny McLaren was dead. John claimed it was self-defense. He was arrested and charged with manslaughter. The bond was set at $100,000. He paid it. And somehow the charges disappeared. But the trauma didn't disappear. It stayed with John. It festered. It made him even more unstable. You'd think an experience like that would humble someone, make them reflect, push them to get help. But not John. He doubled down on his distance. He clung harder to his music. He posted photos with the kids every now and then like a PR campaign for fatherhood. But anyone close to them knew the truth. Kiana was doing it all alone. Friends started noticing the tension. One mutual friend said he was at their house just 2 weeks before the murder, mounting a TV. He said the tension in the air was obvious. Something wasn't right. He didn't say anything at the time, but looking back, he wished he had. Another friend posted after Kiana's death. John was jealous of Kiana's life the whole time. She had the most supportive family I've ever seen. He got her pregnant thinking it would break her, but Kiana loved kids and God gave her her own. He wanted her light so bad he tried to take it. Meanwhile, Kiana was quietly planning her escape. She started talking about going back to school. Maybe nursing, maybe a new job. Something that would give her independence. Something that would let her stand on her own 2 feet and give her children a better life. She didn't broadcast her plans. She wasn't trying to hurt John. She just wanted peace. But to John, peace looked like betrayal, and he wasn't going to let her walk away. June 16, 2025, started like any other Monday. The sun was shining, the weather was nice. Kiana decided to take Kalani and Khalil to the park. John came along. To anyone watching, they looked like a normal family spending time together. At the park, the kids ran around and played. Kiana, always friendly and outgoing, struck up a conversation with another mother named Billy. Their kids got along well. They laughed, they played together. It was one of those easy, natural connections parents make at playgrounds. Kiana and Billy exchanged phone numbers. Kiana mentioned she was thinking about going back to school. She said she wanted to study nursing. She had dreams. She had plans. She wanted more for herself and her children. Billy later said Kiana seemed sweet, genuine. She had no idea that just minutes later, Kiana would be gone. After leaving the park, the family headed to the McDonald's on Stribling Lane in Brandon, Mississippi. It was a short drive, about 10 miles from their home in Pearl. The kids were in the back seat. Kiana and John were in the front. Then, somewhere in the drive-through line, an argument started. We don't know exactly what was said. We don't know what triggered it, but whatever it was, it pushed John over the edge. He pulled out a gun, and he shot Kiana. Right there, in the car, with their 5-year-old daughter and 3-year-old son sitting in the back seat. Kalani and Khalil watched their mother die. After shooting Kiana, John turned the gun on himself. He pulled the trigger, but he didn't die immediately. He was still alive when police arrived. The 911 calls came in just after 6:30 p.m. People at the McDonald's heard the gunshots. They saw the chaos. They called for help. Brandon police arrived within minutes. When they got to the scene, they found Kiana dead from a gunshot wound. John was still in the car, suffering from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Paramedics rushed him to a local hospital in critical condition. The children were physically unharmed, but emotionally, mentally, they had just witnessed something no child should ever see. The McDonald's was shut down for the rest of the night. Police taped off the area. Investigators began piecing together what happened. Brandon Police Chief Joseph French told reporters it appeared to be a domestic incident. He said it was isolated, not a random act of violence. Brandon Mayor Butch Lee released a statement. This was a horrible incident. It's even more tragic when a domestic situation like this happens in front of children. Our prayers go out to everyone connected to those involved. 2 days later, on June 18th, John died from his injuries at the hospital. Kiana was gone, John was gone, and Kilani and Khalil were left without parents. Billy, the woman from the park, posted on social media when she found out what happened. She wrote, I didn't realize I had just met this young lady at the park on Monday evening, just moments before this tragedy. Her kids played with my kids. She said her name was Kiana Jackson, and asked if we could exchange numbers because the kids got along so well. She talked about going back to school for nursing. I would have never imagined that 5 minutes later she would be gone. She was so sweet with 2 of the most precious kids. My car door wouldn't close, so I was delayed a few minutes. As I drove past the scene and saw cops and fire trucks, I had no idea that it was her. Lord, please be with her kids and family. What do you think really happened in those final moments? Share your thoughts below. Your perspective could help others spot the signs. The news of Kiana's death spread quickly. Friends, family, and even strangers were heartbroken. But no one was more affected than Kilani and Khalil. The children survived the shooting physically, but the emotional scars they carry will last a lifetime. They watched their mother get killed. They watched their father shoot himself. In a matter of seconds, they lost both parents. Now, at just 5 and 3 years old, they have to grow up with that trauma. Kiana's family was devastated. They had always been supportive of her. They loved her deeply. And now they were left to pick up the pieces. To help cover funeral costs and support the children, Kiana's family started a GoFundMe page. The description read, Kiana Jackson was a cherished mother leaving behind 2 beautiful children, a daughter 5, and a son 3 years of age. She also was a beloved daughter, sister, and friend. The response was overwhelming. In just days, the page raised over $15,000 toward a $22,000 goal. People from all over the country donated. They didn't know Kiana personally, but her story touched them. They wanted to help her children. They wanted to honor her memory. The pain was real, the anger was justified, and the community demanded better. Kiana Jackson's story is not unique, it's not rare, it's not an isolated incident. It's part of a much bigger problem. Every week in America, women are killed by men who claim to love them. Husbands, boyfriends, ex-partners. Men who say they care, but then take a life because they can't handle rejection, independence, or change. This is called femicide. The killing of women because they are women, and it happens far more often than most people realize. According to reports, more than half of all female murder victims in the United States are killed by a current or former intimate partner. That means the most dangerous person in a woman's life is often the man she loves or once loved. Domestic violence doesn't always start with physical abuse. In many cases, it begins with emotional abuse, withdrawal, coldness, control, jealousy, silence. These are the warning signs that something is wrong. John showed all of these signs. He was emotionally distant. He was possessive. He didn't want to be involved in Kiana's life, but he also didn't want her to leave. He refused to get help. He refused to talk about his trauma. He refused to change. And when Kiana finally decided she wanted more for herself and her children, he saw it as a threat. That's the pattern. Men like John don't want to lose control. They don't want their partners to grow, to heal, or to move on. And when they feel like they're losing that control, they become dangerous. People often say, he didn't seem like the type. But the truth is, he was exactly the type. Withdrawn, controlling, emotionally unavailable, angry at his own failures and unable to celebrate her growth. That's the type. The signs were there. Friends noticed the tension. Family members felt something was off. Even strangers could sense it. But no one intervened. No one knew how bad it really was. Until it was too late. This isn't just Kiana's story. It's the story of thousands of women every year. Women who are killed by the men they trusted. Women who are silenced by violence. Women who deserved better. We need to stop pretending this is rare. We need to stop acting like we can't see it coming, because the truth is, we can. The warning signs are there, we just need to pay attention. And we need to act before it's too late. So, how do we stop this from happening again? First, we need to learn how to recognize emotional abuse. It doesn't always look like bruises or broken bones. Sometimes it's silence, distance, control, jealousy. If someone you know is being isolated, controlled, or made to feel small by their partner, that's abuse. And it can turn deadly. Second, we need to support survivors. Women like Kiana need access to counseling, legal help, and financial resources. Leaving an abusive relationship is hard. It's even harder when you have no money, no job, and nowhere to go. Communities need to step up and provide real support. Not just prayers, but action. Third, we need to address trauma in men. John came back from the army a different person. He carried pain he never dealt with. He refused to get help, and that refusal cost lives. We need to stop treating therapy as weakness. Getting help is strength. Healing is strength. Fourth, communities need to hold people accountable. If you see the warning signs, say something. Check in on your friends. Offer help. Don't ignore red flags just because it's uncomfortable. Finally, we need better laws and enforcement. Domestic violence cases need to be taken seriously. Offenders need consequences. Survivors need protection. Kiana's story didn't have to end this way. If John had gotten help, if someone had intervened, if the system had worked, maybe she'd still be here. If you or someone you know is struggling, don't stay silent. Comment, help, and if you're still watching, hit subscribe. Your support helps us tell stories that matter. Change starts with awareness. It starts with education. It starts with refusing to look the other way. Let's honor Kiana by making sure no other woman suffers the same fate. Kiana Jackson was only 25 years old when her life was taken from her. But in those 25 years, she gave so much love, so much light, so much of herself. But John took all of that away. He didn't just kill Kiana. He killed her future. He killed her dreams. He killed the life she was trying to build. Now Kevani and Kalila left to grow up without their mother. They'll carry the weight of this tragedy for the rest of their lives. But they'll also carry her love, her strength, her light. Kiana's story should never be forgotten. It should be a reminder that domestic violence is real, that emotional abuse is dangerous, that silence can be deadly. Let her story spark change. Let it push us to do better, to speak up, to intervene, to support survivors, to hold abusers accountable. Let her name echo in the hearts of everyone who hears it. Let her memory be a call to action. Kiana Jackson deserved better. She deserved to live. She deserved to see her children grow up. She deserved peace. And even though John tried to take her light, he failed. Because Kiana's light lives on, in her children, in her family, and in everyone who refuses to let her story be forgotten. Rest in power, Kiana Jackson. Your light lives on in your children, and your story will not be forgotten.